have you ever really asked yourself what makes the stacking community different than normal investors? Like, is there a difference? Are stackers just looking for growth? What makes the stacking pursuit so much different than the traditional stocks, bonds, real estate, that kind of thing? I think there is a difference, and I think it's something that, most stackers probably kind of gloss over, but it is an interesting topic because first and foremost with stacking, the main question that I have right out the gate is, as a stacker, you're broken down right from the beginning into either looking into it for an investment value, basically gains of some sort from gold, silver, platinum, some type of monetary gain over time. I would assume that most stackers look for something like that, at least as part of the stacking pursuit. Now, again, you have other stackers that are SHTF stackers who are using it as basically insurance against a monetary meltdown. Now, to that point, my question there is, if you're one of those stackers who's kind of banking on, a meltdown of the financial system, does that in some way make you unpatriotic? Are you anti-America, anti-capitalism because you want the system to melt down to be proven right about metals? I don't know, but it's interesting, right? Because you do see so many of those people that constantly claim how, the debt this and the debt that, and, it's unsustainable. There's a fine line there somewhere between responsibility as far as, sovereign finance and, being patriotic, kind of rooting for the team as far as America. I find it interesting too that, obviously the stacking community, many in the stacking community consider themselves to be extremely patriotic. And yet somehow on the same token, they kind of root against the system in this manner. Now, the case could be made that, well, Chris, the monetary system isn't America. Okay, I can see that. I could see if that was your argument. The question that I have then is, how would America fare in a meltdown of the financial system? How would your fellow Americans fare in that kind of environment? So I do think that there is more to it than just saying, well, this capitalist monarchy that we've set up here, needs to go. Okay, I could see some merit in that. But actually using metals as your way to root against the system kind of strikes me as unpatriotic. I don't know. Like I said, it's a topic for debate, and I'm interested to hear what different sides have to say because, like I said, many in the stacking community consider themselves to be on the stronger end of, the patriotic spectrum. And so how do you reconcile that with also kind of going against the grain and rooting for a collapse of, the system as we know it? This was brought to me because I was actually, I watched Joe Rogan. I like Joe Rogan. I've actually met Joe Rogan a few times in real life, actually, when he was doing Fear Factor many ages ago. Cool guy, fun guy. To me, he isn't the sharpest tool in the shed, but he's a smart guy, like in that he's open to, listening, and he understands a lot of different things. I think with Joe, one of the issues that I have with him is he does tend to, like all of us, right? We all do it. So I'm not making excuses for anyone in particular. But Joe does tend to fall into the echo chamber at times. You know what I mean? Like he does go down some rabbit holes. Not talking about COVID. I'm not talking about, he's just in general. Like, for example, myself, back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s actually, used to listen to AM radio, KFI, or like AM 640 here in SoCal, and that's a right leaning station. But what I would listen to it was at night they have Coast to Coast radio, which is like all UFOs, ghosts, conspiracy stuff, because it's entertaining. It's cool to hear different stuff, and obviously one of the main protagonist on that show was Alex Jones on there, fairly regularly, and different people like that. And Joe to me always has a predisposition to going down rabbit holes with people like that, like Alex Jones, things like that. So anyway, the conversation that I was listening to with Joe Rogan was to him again with it's always the same tired people, Tim Dillon and I forget the other guy's name. It's funny because like the issue that I have when listening to Joe's podcast is a lot of times it's like him talking with another guy on the same level of him as far as knowledge level about like a complex topic. And it's cool to hear the discourse like back and forth, which is obviously why people listen. But the point of the matter is, it's like they're talking about something that has way more layers to it, but they're giving a very simple way that you could solve something. For example, one of the things that they were talking about was real estate, and how, like, basically real estate is one of the ways that the wealthy separate themselves from the common people, the peasants. And so this has obviously manifested itself in personal real estate, like individual single family homes. Now we have corporations going in there and buying up individual real estate, things like that. And what they were talking about, him and Tim Dillon, was actually pretty funny to me. Was talking about, well, we should make a law that bans, that puts a limit on when these companies can hold, how long they can hold real estate and things like that. And it was funny to me because Joe has obviously taken more of a conservative, if you'll call it that, a slant in the last couple of years. And so it's funny because, like, for someone who's very anti Big Brother, big government, that type of thing, although I would agree, that's hey, you got to rein in these corporations, right? That, by putting a ban like that, that's not the free market at work. You're basically putting restrictions on the free market. Isn't America all about the free market? Especially, the right side of the aisle, aren't they supposed to be more, hands off with regard to regulation? Interesting to me that they would propose something like that. But also, it's deeper than that, because obviously this has been a trend for quite a while, where even individuals who have the means go and buy real estate as a second investment home and things like that. And, depending on how successful you are, obviously they extrapolate that into, different businesses. But it's very interesting to me because I think, again, as with many things these days, you really lose the real villain because you're so focused on the topic. It's not necessarily the elites that are, doing this kind of thing. Really, it comes down to the same. It's like Scooby-Doo, the constant unmasking of the evil entity. And the evil entity, at the end of the day, for a lot of these problems that both left and right complain about, is really just corporate greed. I mean, at this point, they've basically become, able to run wild, not only not being regulated, but also just from a corporate profit standpoint. The thing is, in our system, again, remember, corporations only have one legal duty, which is to provide shareholder value, make a profit, grow. That is their job. They have no other responsibility than that. So it's very tough because, on one hand, that's what our society celebrates. We celebrate billionaires and these people who amass huge amounts of wealth. Well, how do they do it? The wealth isn't created in a vacuum. It's sucked up from everybody else and concentrated in specific individuals or entities. That's how the system works. There's this kind of pseudo myth that, they create wealth. No, there's a set amount of resources and assets. The wealth is drawn from other places to concentrate, in individuals or corporations. So it's very difficult with even silver and gold to, again, reconcile the fact that these kind of things, for them to have their day as far as being the end all, as far as financial instrument, really is a bet against the system. You're betting that the system comes crashing down. My take on that is perfectly understandable. But the hard part is, if that did happen, again, the powers that be have so much vested interest in keeping the status quo, keeping the system going, keeping the stock market going, keeping the financial system going, that they're going to do everything they need to do that, which means that the SHTF is extremely unlikely, at least as far as a financial meltdown. Now, that's not to say there's not going to be problems here and there and things like that, but as we've seen, it never really results in metals having any role or playing, having any type of explosive, growth, anything like that. So the question is, not only what does it mean as far as stocking and being patriotic, but also what's the end game on stacking? At what point are you satisfied, particularly for those who would never sell their stack? What's the point? Again, I mean, this keep up with inflation idea, okay, it sounds great on paper, but again, what other assets do you have that you're looking to keep up rather than exceed? Really? Not many.